The divorce papers were still a week away, but I walked into a nightmare. My wife's sister, her kids, and a tattooed stranger were eating from my grandmother's china, acting like they owned the place. My wife, nowhere to be found, probably with her new trainer. This wasn't just my house, it was a circus, and I was the invisible man paying for it all. Welcome, everyone. I'm Arthur, and for 25 years, I was the dependable husband, the tireless father, the invisible provider. But when your own family treats you like an ATM and a doormat, sometimes the only way to get their attention is to cut them off completely. If you've ever been taken for granted, hit that subscribe button right now, because today I'm sharing the explosive story of how I stopped being invisible and started reclaiming my life, one devastating decision at a time. The divorce papers were scheduled to arrive next Tuesday. Instead, I found my wife's sister, Susan, ensconced in our guest room. She was there with her 3 children and a boyfriend I'd never encountered, casually consuming cereal from my grandmother's prized china bowls as if she owned the place. "Morning, Arthur," Susan drawled, barely glancing up from her phone. "Hope you don't mind we use the good dishes." The kids were being particularly picky about breakfast again. I stood there, clad in my work clothes, a greasy HVAC uniform reeking of refrigerant and profound disappointment, watching this woman, who'd never held a paying job in her life, treat my home like a 5-star hotel. The boyfriend, a tattooed man in his 30s sporting a tank top that showcased some rather alarming prison ink, nodded at me with a familiarity I certainly didn't reciprocate. "Who the heck are you?" I asked him directly. "This is David," Susan replied for him, her tone suggesting this was perfectly normal. "He's staying with us for a while." Patricia, of course, had deemed this arrangement acceptable. It was entirely in character. My wife, Patricia, had been making unilateral decisions for months now. Ever since she'd become obsessed with CrossFit and started spending all her time with her new gym buddies, I'd become a mere background hum in my own house. "Where is Patricia?" I asked, checking my watch. It was 7:30 a.m. and my wife was nowhere to be found. "Early workout session with Marcus," Susan responded, still glued to her phone. "She'll be back around 9 o'clock. Marcus, the name that had been cropping up in conversations for weeks now. Marcus, the trainer. Marcus, the motivator. Marcus, the likely reason my wife now felt the urgent need for an immediate shower upon returning from the gym. I grabbed my coffee mug, the one that read "World's Okayest Dad," a sarcastic gift from my sons, and headed for the door. Another day repairing other people's broken air conditioners while my own life crumbled around me. At the shop, my friend Albert looked up from the engine he was meticulously rebuilding. "You look like heck, Arthur. What's eating you now?" Susan moved in with her boyfriend and kids. Patricia didn't even ask me. Albert let out a low whistle. "That's the sister who borrowed $5,000 from you last year and never paid it back? The same one?" I sat down heavily on a milk crate we used as makeshift seating. "She's treating my house like a free boarding house, and Patricia acts like I'm the problem for not being thrilled about it." "When's the last time you and Patricia actually talked? Like, really talked?" I considered this. Honestly, I couldn't recall. She was constantly at the gym, with her gym friends or talking about the gym. Everything revolved around her new lifestyle and how much better she felt now that she was supposedly taking care of herself. I made air quotes with my fingers. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm apparently part of the old life she's trying to leave behind." My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Don't forget dinner with Samuel and Frederick tonight, 7 o'clock p.m. Try not to embarrass us." My 2 older sons, Samuel, 29, a realtor who never missed an opportunity to flaunt his financial success, and Frederick, 26, whose gambling addiction I'd bailed out of 3 times in the past year. Both had inherited their mother's uncanny ability to make me feel profoundly inadequate. "Family dinner tonight," I told Albert. Can't wait to hear what I'm doing wrong this week. Maybe it won't be that bad, I laughed, a humorless sound. Albert, my wife's sister, living in my guest room with her felonious boyfriend, my wife spending more time with her trainer than me, and my sons only contacting me when they needed money. How exactly was this situation going to improve? That evening, I arrived home to find the house teeming with near strangers. Patricia's gym friends were present, specifically Michelle and another woman who appeared to subsist on a diet of protein powder and gossip. Susan's boyfriend, David, held court in my living room, regaling my youngest son, Daniel, with tales of his time in county jail as if they were heroic war stories. "Arthur," Patricia called out upon seeing me. "There you are. Come meet everyone properly." She looked different, tighter, more muscular, but also harder somehow. The woman I'd married 25 years ago had possessed a softer demeanor, a ready laugh. This Patricia seemed perpetually poised for combat. "I know everyone," I said. "This is my house." "Don't be antisocial," she retorted, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward the kitchen. Shelley and Michelle were deep in conversation. "I'm just saying," Shelley was saying, "a man who doesn't take care of himself is basically giving up on his marriage." "Exactly," Michelle agreed. "Like, when was the last time Arthur even tried to work out? Or dress nicely, or, She lowered her voice, but not sufficiently. "Make an effort in the bedroom." I froze. They were dissecting my sex life in my kitchen during what was supposed to be a family dinner. "Oh, God." Patricia laughed. "Don't get me started. I keep telling him that just because he can fix an air conditioner doesn't mean he knows how to handle anything else that needs attention." The women erupted in laughter. I stood there, clutching a beer I no longer desired, listening to my wife deride our intimate life to her friends. Samuel appeared beside me. "Dad, we need to talk about..." "What?" "About this whole situation. Mom told us about the problems you two have been having." "What problems?" Frederick joined us, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Look, Dad, we're not taking sides, but maybe you should consider that Mom has a point about some things." "What point?" "About you not growing with her," Samuel said carefully. "She's been working on herself, getting healthier, expanding her social circle. Maybe you should try to keep up." I looked at my sons, two grown men who still sought financial assistance from me, offering me relationship advice. "Keep up. How?" "Join a gym. Buy some new clothes. Stop acting like you're already retired." From the living room, I heard David's voice growing louder. "So I told the guard, you can search me all you want, but you ain't gonna find nothing 'cause I'm smarter than you think." "That's fascinating," I murmured to my sons. "Your mother's sister's boyfriend is regaling our guests with prison stories. Your mother's in the kitchen telling her friends that I'm lousy in bed, and you two think I'm the one who needs to change." David, looking younger than his 23 years, approached us. "Maybe we could all just try to get along for Mom's sake." "For Mom's sake?" I nodded slowly. "Right. Because God forbid anyone consider what might be beneficial for Dad's sake." Patricia reappeared, her friends in tow. "Arthur," she said, "she was just asking about your work. Tell her about that big commercial job you did last month." "I fix air conditioners," I stated flatly. "They break. I fix them. It's not very exciting." "He's being modest," Patricia interjected, her voice laced with a cutting edge. "Arthur's very good at fixing things. It's just too bad he's not as good at maintaining them." More laughter from her friends. My sons looked embarrassed, but not for me. They were embarrassed of me. "You know what?" I set down my beer. "I think I'll skip dinner. You all seem to be having a great time without me anyway." "Arthur, don't be dramatic," Patricia said. Dramatic? Her sister's boyfriend was telling prison stories in our living room. Her friends were discussing our love life in our kitchen, and our sons were dispensing self-improvement advice. But I was being dramatic. I started toward the stairs, but Samuel caught my arm. "Dad, come on. We're family, are we?" I surveyed the room, because from where I stood, it looked like I was merely the guy who paid for everything while everyone else lived their best lives. That night, lying in bed next to Patricia, who was actively texting someone at 11:30 p.m., I made a decision. If my family wanted to treat me as if I were invisible, perhaps it was time to demonstrate what true invisibility entailed. The next morning, I contacted my lawyer. Arthur, Thomas Miller, who had handled my legal matters for a decade, said, "What can I do for you?" "I want to know about separating my finances from my wife's, and I want to know about removing people from my property." "Are we talking about divorce?" "We're talking about me taking control of my own life." 3 weeks later, my plan was in motion. I'd quietly transferred my inheritance, the money from my father's estate that had been languishing in our joint account, into a separate account solely in my name. I consulted Tom about my rights regarding house guests, and I began meticulously documenting everything. The documentation proved easier than anticipated. Susan's boyfriend, David, had outstanding warrants for unpaid child support. Susan herself owed back taxes in 2 states. My wife's gym friends had been posting photos of their girls' nights out that clearly showed them engaging in drunk driving. And Patricia, well, Patricia had been less than discreet in covering her tracks with Marcus. I discovered months' worth of text messages on our shared iPad, not just about workouts. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Arthur's working late again. That thing you did with your tongue, I've been thinking about it all day. He doesn't even notice when I come home late anymore. It's like I'm married to a ghost." A ghost. That's what I was to my own wife, my own family. A ghost who paid the mortgage, fixed the appliances, and funded her gym membership so she could meet men who weren't ghosts. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. Then I began to formulate my next move. The opportunity presented itself sooner than expected. Patricia announced that she wanted to throw me a surprise 50th birthday party. "It'll be fun," she said. "Just family and a few friends. Nothing too crazy." "I don't really want a party." "Come on, Arthur. When's the last time we celebrated anything? It'll be good for us." She seemed genuinely enthusiastic, which should have served as my first warning sign. Patricia hadn't expressed genuine enthusiasm about anything involving me in months. The party was scheduled for Saturday night at Murphy's Brewery, a local establishment with a private room in the back. When I arrived, the room was overflowing with people I barely recognized. Patricia's gym entourage was present in full force, along with Susan and David, my 3 sons, and a handful of neighbors. "Surprise!" everyone yelled, though the enthusiasm felt forced and contrived. Marcus was there. I recognized him instantly from the photos on Patricia's phone. Tall, heavily tattooed, wearing a form-fitting shirt that showcased his CrossFit physique. He shook my hand with an unnerving air of familiarity. "Arthur, happy birthday, man. Patricia talks about you all the time." "I bet she does," I thought grimly. The evening began conventionally enough. People mingled, drank beer, and engaged in polite small talk. But as the alcohol flowed, the conversations grew increasingly loose and mean-spirited. "Speech! Speech!" someone shouted. Samuel stood up, clutching a beer. "I'd like to say a few words about my father." Here we go, I thought. "Dad," Samuel began, "you've always been reliable. You show up, you do your job, you pay your bills. You're like a really dependable appliance." Laughter rippled through the crowd, not warm, genuine laughter. "And like most appliances," Frederick chimed in, "you're not very exciting, but we'd probably miss you if you broke down completely." More laughter. I looked at Patricia, expecting her to intervene, but she was smiling, actively encouraging this charade. "Speaking of breaking down," Shelley called out, "Patricia was telling us about your attempt at romance last month. The dinner you made—" "Oh, God." Patricia laughed. "He tried to cook this elaborate meal, but he burned everything. The smoke alarm went off 3 times. The neighbors called to make sure the house wasn't on fire." And then, Michelle added, "And then he tried to be all romantic afterward, but what?" I asked, my voice cutting through the laughter. The room fell silent. Michelle looked at Patricia, who waved her hand dismissively. "It's fine. He knows he's not exactly Casanova," Patricia said. "I mean, after 25 years, we're basically roommates anyway." "Roommates," I repeated. "You know what I mean," she said quickly. "We're comfortable with each other." Comfortable? I stood up slowly. "Is that what we're calling it?" The room was deathly silent. Everyone stared at me, awaiting the predictable response from the reliable appliance. "You know what's funny?" I said, my gaze sweeping across the room. "I came here thinking this was a birthday party, but it's actually a roast." "A roast where my wife tells strangers that I'm boring in bed, my sons compare me to a broken appliance, and everyone laughs about what a disappointment I am." "Arthur," Patricia said, "you're being too sensitive." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I'd saved because I'd been considering the possibility that perhaps I should be more sensitive, more attentive to what was truly transpiring around me. I held up the phone so she could see her own text messages on the screen. The color drained from her face. "What is that?" she asked quietly. "These are your text messages with Marcus," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The ones where you talk about how much you enjoy his tongue and how I'm like a ghost and how easy it is to sneak around behind my back." The room exploded. People gasped, talking over one another, pulling out their phones to record the unfolding drama. Marcus stepped forward. "Hey man, I think you're misunderstanding." "Am I misunderstanding this one?" I read from the phone. "Arthur's working late again. Come over around 8. We'll have at least 2 hours before I have to pretend to be tired." Patricia lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. Or this one. "I can't believe I wasted 25 years on someone who thinks foreplay is asking if I'm ready." "Stop it!" Patricia screamed. "Stop reading those!" "Why?" I asked. "You didn't seem to mind sharing details about our love life with your friends. I thought everyone was interested in my personal business." My sons stared at their mother in shock. Samuel looked nauseous. Frederick was backing toward the door. Even David, the peacemaker, looked horrified. "Dad," Samuel said quietly, "maybe we should all just go home." "Home?" I laughed, a harsh, unpleasant sound. "You mean the home where your aunt and her boyfriend are living rent-free? The home where your mother brings her lover when I'm at work?" "That home?" I looked around the room at all these people who had been laughing at me just moments before. You know what the best part is? You all think I'm pathetic. The boring husband, the disappointing father, the reliable appliance. But at least I'm not a cheating wife, a deadbeat boyfriend, or grown men who still need daddy to pay their bills. I walked toward the door, then turned back. "By the way, Patricia, I moved my inheritance money into a separate account this morning. Susan and her boyfriend have until Sunday to find somewhere else to live. And Marcus," I looked directly at him, "my wife's all yours. Just remember, if she'll cheat with you, she'll cheat on you." I left them all standing there in stunned silence, but that was only the beginning. The next morning, I awoke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Patricia had apparently spent the night at Shelley's house, and everyone wanted to talk. My sons wanted to know if I was serious about cutting off their financial support. Susan wanted to know if I was serious about evicting her. Patricia wanted to know if we could somehow work things out. I ignored them all and went to work, Albert took one look at me and grinned. "You look like a man who burned down his own house and enjoyed watching it burn." "Something like that. Want to talk about it?" I told him everything. The party, the text messages, the confrontation. When I finished, Albert was quiet for a long moment. "So, what's the plan?" he asked. "Plan? Arthur, you just declared war on your entire family. You better have a plan for what comes next." He was right. I'd acted impulsively at the party, but now I needed to proceed strategically. These people had been taking advantage of me for years, treating me like I was nothing. It was time to show them precisely how little I was willing to tolerate. I started with Susan. On Sunday morning, I arrived at the house with an eviction notice and 2 police officers. "You can't do this!" Susan screamed from the front porch. "Patricia said we could stay." "Patricia doesn't own this house," I said calmly. "I do. You have 2 hours to pack your things and leave." David emerged, shirtless, attempting to project an air of intimidation. "This is BS, man. We got nowhere to go." "That's not my problem," I said. "You've got outstanding warrants, David. I'd suggest you focus on getting packed instead of arguing with me." One of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, is that true about the warrants?" David's tough guy act crumbled instantly. Within an hour, Susan's family was loading their belongings into a U-Haul while David avoided eye contact with the police officers. "You're heartless," Susan told me as she carried the last box to the truck. "Family is supposed to help family." "You're right," I said. Family is supposed to help family, not take advantage of family. Next, I addressed my son's precarious financial situations. I called Samuel first. "Dad, thank God," he said when he answered. "We need to talk about Mom. She's a mess. She's been crying all weekend." "I'm not calling about your mother," I said. "I'm calling to let you know that I'm closing the joint account that I've been using to help with your mortgage payments." Silence. "What do you mean?" "I mean that starting next month, you'll need to make your full mortgage payment on your own. The same goes for Frederick's gambling debts and David's college tuition. You're all adults. It's time you started acting like it." "Dad, you can't be serious. I can't afford my mortgage without your help." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you spent my birthday party comparing me to a broken appliance." "That was just... we were joking around." "You know we didn't mean it." "The problem, Samuel, is that I think you did mean it. I think you all see me as nothing more than a source of money. Well, the well is dry." I hung up and immediately called Frederick. "Dad," he said, sounding panicked. "Samuel just called me. Please tell me you're not really cutting us off." "I am really cutting you off, but I owe $12,000 to some very serious people. They're not going to accept my dad's mad at me as an excuse for not paying." "Then you better figure out how to come up with $12,000. "How am I supposed to do that?" "Get a job, Frederick. A real job, not poker." "Dad, please. I know we screwed up at the party." "You didn't screw up at the party, Frederick. You showed me exactly who you really are. All of you did." The calls with David were the most difficult. He was the youngest, and he'd always been the most decent of my 3 sons, but he'd also been the most financially dependent on me. "Dad," he said when I finally answered, "I don't understand what's happening. Mom's staying with Aunt Shelley. Samuel's talking about selling his house. Frederick's freaking out about some debt. What's going on?" "What's going on is that I'm tired of being taken for granted. But I never took you for granted. I've always appreciated everything you've done for me." "Have you? Because at the party, you stood there and watched your brothers humiliate me, and you didn't say a word." "I didn't know what to say. I was shocked by the whole thing." "You were shocked that your mother was cheating on me, or shocked that I finally stood up for myself?" Long pause. "Both, I guess." "Well, here's something else that might shock you. I'm not paying for your college anymore." If you want to finish your degree, you'll need to figure out how to do it on your own. Dad, I only have 1 semester left. Then you better make it count. By Wednesday, the entire family was in crisis mode. Patricia had moved in with Shelley temporarily, but that was clearly not a sustainable solution. Samuel was frantically trying to refinance his mortgage. Frederick had accepted a job at a call center, working 12-hour shifts to pay down his gambling debt, and David had withdrawn from college to obtain a full-time job. I felt a twinge of guilt about David, but not enough to change my course of action. Sometimes people need to learn that actions have consequences. The true satisfaction came from witnessing the implosion of Patricia's social circle. Word of the party confrontation had spread, and apparently not everyone was as tolerant of adultery as Patricia had anticipated. The gym, where she worked as an instructor, began receiving complaints from members who disapproved of her behavior. Marcus, it turned out, had been sleeping with at least 2 other married women from the gym, and when that news broke, the entire place descended into chaos, rife with drama and recriminations. Shelley called me on Thursday. "Arthur, this has gone far enough," she said. "Patricia is destroyed. She's barely eating. She's not sleeping. You've made your point." "Have I? What point is that? That I'm angry about the affair? We get it. But this scorched earth approach isn't helping anyone. It's helping me. How is destroying your family helping you?" "Shelley, let me ask you something. At the party, when you and Michelle were making jokes about my love life, did it occur to you that I might be able to hear you? We'd been drinking. And when my sons were calling me a broken appliance, did you think that was funny? It was just party talk, Arthur. People say things they don't mean when they're trying to be entertaining. But here's the thing. I think they did mean it. I think you all see me as this pathetic figure who exists to pay bills and fix things and take all the blame. Well, I'm done being that guy. So, what do you want? You want Patricia to beg for forgiveness? I want Patricia to face the consequences of her choices, just like I'm facing the consequences of mine. Friday evening, I was at Albert's shop helping him rebuild a transmission when Patricia showed up. She looked dreadful, red eyes, hollow cheeks, as if she hadn't slept in days. "Arthur, we need to talk." Albert looked at me, and I nodded. He wiped his hands on a rag and headed for the door. "I'll be at Murphy's if you need me." When we were alone, Patricia sat down on the milk crate and began to cry. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry about everything. The affair, the party, all of it. I know I hurt you." "Yes, you did. Can we please... Are you trying to work this out?" "I ended things with Marcus. I quit the gym. I'm willing to do anything to fix this." I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 25 years, who had become a complete stranger. "Patricia, do you remember our wedding day?" "Of course." "Do you remember what you said in your vows about honoring and cherishing me?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "When did you stop? When did I become someone you could mock to your friends? When did I become so unimportant that you could cheat on me and think I wouldn't notice?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know when it happened. I felt like we were strangers living in the same house, like we were just going through the motions." "So, instead of talking to me about it, you decided to talk to Marcus about it, with your clothes off. It wasn't supposed to happen. It started as friendship, and then you decided that I was such a pathetic loser that I'd never find out, or that even if I did find out, I'd be too weak to do anything about it." She looked up at me with something akin to surprise. "You're different. I'm the same person I've always been." "The difference is that I'm not pretending anymore." "Pretending what?" "Pretending that I'm okay with being treated like garbage by the people who are supposed to love me." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Finally, Patricia spoke again. "What do you want from me?" I want you to understand that there are consequences for your actions. You humiliated me in front of our friends and family. You cheated on me for months. You made me feel worthless. I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix it, Patricia. Sorry doesn't undo the damage. So what can I do to make this right? I looked at her for a long moment. I don't think you can. The final confrontation took place the following Saturday. I was at home, enjoying the peace and quiet of my empty house, when I heard cars pulling into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Patricia getting out of Shelley's car, followed by Samuel, Frederick, and David. They were clearly arriving for some sort of family intervention. I opened the door before they could even knock. "Family meeting?" I asked. Samuel stepped forward, attempting to take control of the situation. "Dad, we need to talk. This whole situation has gotten completely out of hand." "Has it?" "You're destroying everything," Frederick stated. "Mom's a wreck. We're all struggling financially. The whole family is falling apart." "Interesting perspective," I replied. "Come in." They filed into my living room and sat down as if they were staging an intervention, which, upon reflection, I realized they probably were. "Dad," David began, "we all know you have a right to be angry. What Mom did was wrong, and the way we acted at the party was wrong, but this punishment thing has gone too far." "Punishment? Cutting off our money, kicking out Aunt Susan, refusing to talk to Mom?" Samuel enumerated. "You're trying to punish all of us." "No," I said. "I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to save myself." "Save yourself from what?" "From being invisible in my own life." I looked around at their faces. My wife, my 3 sons, the people who were supposed to matter most to me in the world. "Do you want to know what the worst part of that party was?" I asked. "It wasn't finding out about the affair. It wasn't even being humiliated in front of all those people. The worst part was realizing that none of you see me as a real person." "That's not true," Patricia protested. "Isn't it, Patricia? When's the last time you asked me about my day? Not whether I fixed something or whether I deposited my paycheck, but actually asked me how I was doing?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Samuel, when's the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for money, not to complain about something, just to see how your old man was doing?" Samuel looked uncomfortable. "Frederick, can you tell me one thing about my life that doesn't involve bailing you out of trouble?" Frederick stared at the floor. "David, you're the only one who's ever shown any interest in me as a person, but even you only call when you need something." "Dad," David said quietly, "that's not fair." "Isn't it? Think about it. Really, think about it. When was the last time any of you treated me like I mattered for something other than what I could provide?" The room was silent. "You want to know why I cut off the money? Because that's all I was to you, a source of money. You want to know why I'm not trying to save my marriage? Because I wasn't a husband. I was a roommate who paid the bills while my wife found excitement somewhere else." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where I'd lived for 15 years. I spent 25 years trying to be a good husband and father. I worked overtime to pay for Samuel's real estate classes. I bailed Frederick out of debt over and over again. I paid for David's college. I fixed everything that broke. I paid every bill on time. I showed up for every birthday and holiday and school event. I turned back to face them. And what did I get for it? A wife who cheated on me because I was boring, and sons who thought it was funny to compare me to a broken appliance. You all took me for granted. And when I finally stood up for myself, you act like I'm the one who's out of line. "We didn't mean to take you for granted," Samuel said. "But you did, for years. And the only reason you're here now is because you want me to go back to being the guy who pays for everything and asks for nothing in return." "That's not true," Patricia said. "I'm here because I love you." "Do you? Or do you love the security I provide? Because there's a difference." She didn't answer. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "Patricia, I'm filing for divorce. You can have half of the marital assets as required by law, but the house is mine. It was my inheritance that paid for it. You'll need to find somewhere else to live. Arthur, I'm not finished. Samuel, Frederick, David, you're all adults. It's time you started acting like it. I'm not your personal bank anymore. If you want a relationship with me, it's going to be based on mutual respect, not financial dependence." "Dad, please," Frederick pleaded. "I can't make it without your help." "Then you better figure out how to make it, because the alternative is learning to live without me entirely." I walked to the front door and opened it. "I think this conversation is over." They filed out slowly, Patricia crying, my sons looking shell-shocked. As they reached their cars, Samuel turned back. "Dad, what if we can't do it? What if we can't make it without your help?" "Then you'll fail," I said. "And maybe failure will teach you something that success never did." I closed the door and locked it. 6 months later, I was a different man, living a different life. The divorce was finalized, and Patricia had moved to another town to make a fresh start. Samuel had managed to keep his house by taking on a roommate and working a second job at night. Frederick had gotten clean from his gambling addiction and was slowly but surely paying down his debts. David had completed his final semester by taking out student loans and was now working as a teacher. None of them had spoken to me in 3 months. I was perfectly okay with that. I'd sold the house and bought a smaller place across town. I'd started dating a woman named Carol who worked at the library and found me genuinely interesting. I'd taken up woodworking and joined a hiking club. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life instead of just funding everyone else's. Albert stopped by one Saturday afternoon and found me building a bookshelf in my garage. "You look good," he said. "Happy?" "I am happy." "Any regrets?" I thought about it. I regret that it took me so long to realize what was happening. I regret that I let them treat me that way for so many years. "What about losing your family, Albert?" "They weren't my family. They were people who happened to be related to me, who saw me as a resource to be exploited. My real family, if I ever have one again, will be people who actually care about me as a person." "Think any of them will come around?" "Maybe David. He's got the best heart of the bunch. But honestly, I'm not holding my breath. And if they don't, then I'll know I made the right choice." As Albert left, I went back to work on the bookshelf. It was a beautiful piece, solid oak, hand-fitted joints, built to last, like the life I was building for myself. Strong, carefully constructed, and designed to support the things that actually mattered. My phone rang. I glanced at it and saw David's name on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Hi, Dad. David, I was wondering, would you like to have lunch sometime, just to talk? Not about money or family drama. Just to talk." I smiled. "I'd like that." "Good. How about next Saturday?" "Next Saturday sounds perfect." After I hung up, I went back to work on the bookshelf. Maybe I hadn't lost everything after all. Maybe I just finally learned the difference between being needed and being valued. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth everything it had cost me to learn.